Hello, WCA, Mike Amori. Wow, what a group we have this session. I want you guys to take a really good look at these positions. Pay really close attention and put some hard work in, okay? I want you to make sure you understand all three of the positions we're going to study in this video. This semester, we're talking about the word technique a lot. And in chess, technique basically means your ability to kind of win positions that should be won, and you do it with a method that really makes sense. You look at the position and you have exact steps that you take to win the game. Okay? So let's take a look at this ending here, which is completely winning for white. It's actually the ending of the first position we did in class, but take a look at it from here. White to move gives a check. If black doesn't want that pawn to queen, they have to play d8. And fortunately for white, they have an extra knight here. Because if they had to move their king, if you put the king here, it would be stalemate. Or if you moved it anywhere else, you would lose the pawn. The king would just take it. But we have a knight on the board, so we just back up. And remember, I like to back up. Don't come forward because there's an excellent chance you could stalemate your opponent. That's it. The knight takes away this square, and that would be really sad. So go back with your knight. Black's only move is to come out, and then you simply move your king up, and then when he goes away, you put a queen on the board, and life is good. Okay, now, this position here is what we started with in class. And believe it or not, the final position came from this one. Now, when we're talking about technique, you want to be able to look at a position like this and use words to describe the plan you're going to take to win this game. So here, with the two pawns locked up, you see these two pawns bumping heads? This is not going anywhere. Your plan is to obviously win this pawn, then use your king to support this pawn all the way up the board, get black into the stalemate position, waste a move with your knight, get the king to come out, and you make a queen. Boy, that sounds easy. You want to know something? With a little bit of practice, it is. Now, what is the exact plan? We're going to get our king up into these squares. And once the king is around here, this king will not be able to use this square eventually. Like just imagine your king is here or here. Then this guy is not going to be able to use this square, which means if he wants to guard this pawn, he's going to have to do it from the other side. Now, you may wonder why this machine whistles all the time. Yeah, I'm using a program called ChessBase. And when you pick up a piece that's not supposed to move or goes back to its original square, the machine whistles. I have no idea why. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Now, this king, why is he going to be near this pawn? Because this pawn is going to be attacked. By which piece? Ah, you guessed it, the knight. So step 2, after moving the king up, is to get this knight to attack this pawn. And once the knight attacks the pawn, the king is going to have to babysit it. From where? From one of these 3 squares, okay? Let me put the lights on for you. You see these 3 squares? Those are the only places that king can be to protect his pawn. So once we start taking those away, we're going to win this pawn with our king. Okay, let me show you how to do that. Black to play. Let's say he brings his king up. So what was our plan? Centralize the king. King f7. Knight d3. That was step 2. We're going to attack the pawn with a knight. King e7, and there we go. Knight b4. And notice the knight on b4 covers that square. That's one of the big 3 squares that this king really wants to have control of. And once your knight is here, that king can't use the c6 square. So what can he do? He comes to d6 to protect his pawn. What do? We come up with our king. He tries to keep us out and at the same time keeps his pawn protected. That's not a problem for us because we can afford to go way out to the right. He can't follow you out there because the knight will simply take the pawn. So he's not going to let that happen. He's going to take a step back, and then we simply march in with our king, and that's it. It's over. The 3 squares that king needs to control, he's going to lose it now. He can't sit there anymore because he's on one of them. He can't come to the right because of the king. He can't go to the left because of the knight. He's got to back up. When he backs up, you could, in this position, simply take the pawn with the knight. But just to keep things smooth, I like to go for it with the king, knowing that I can force that stalemate position without thinking. Opposition, we move out of the way. The king takes opposition. Again, without the knight on the board, white's not going to win this game. But with the knight on the board, we're simply going to push the king all the way back until we get to the stalemate position. What do we do here? Check. King d8 is the only move. If he goes this way, you just put a queen on the board. So king d8, and then again, don't come forward. You might stalemate the king. Simply go back with the knight. The king comes out. We protect the queening square. And that's this one that I'm lighting up here. That's the most important square on the board right now. That's the square where the pawn turns into you-know-who. King c6. There's Big Mama. And I'm assuming everybody in the class could win this position. Okay? Very good. All right, let's take a look at number 2. This is a really cool position. The material, if you did the math, is equal. Rooks are supposed to be worth 5. Bishops are 3. Each pawn is 1. So it's 5 against 5. The problem for black in this position is the pawn here on b7 is so far advanced that it is like, I don't know, you tell me, what is that thing worth? But part of your technique as a good chess player is to learn patterns that fit positions you're playing in that moment. So let's pretend this is a tournament game. There's more than one way to win this, but most masters here, they're going to find the following move instantly. Bishop to c8. It's such a cool move because it completely ties up the rook. And what it does for black, think about if you're playing black, you can't do anything with the rook. If you take the bishop, they're going to take you back and make a queen. If you take the pawn, then the bishop is going to take back. And guess what, my friends? We have a king and a pawn against a king with an extra minor piece. Why would we use the minor piece? To waste a move, okay? However, a good player with black probably isn't going to let that happen. So what will they do? Well, if they bring their king up, now what we can do is simply take them down to the stalemate position, except it won't be a stalemate because black will have something they will have to move. So let me show you. King over, g4. King f6. What would you do here, by the way? Can you kind of guess the moves that white's going to play? Give a check with the pawn. King blockades you. King g4. We're just going to force black to move his king. If he doesn't, if he messes around with the rook, then thank you very much. We either have a free bishop or we're going to have a queen on the board. So they're probably not going to do that. So they go back. We come up with our king. And watch this. We just push all the way up to the stalemate position. King g5. Black goes straight back. We come in with our king. They take opposition. We give a check. King g8. Now, there's more than one way to win this position. The following is my favorite. We stalemate the king, but we don't stalemate the game. If the rook takes the bishop, we simply take back by turning it into a rook or a queen checkmate. But they're probably not going to do that. They'll see that. The only other legal move is to take the pawn with the rook. But once they do you guys see how this ends? You simply give a check with the bishop. If you stalemated the king, that means he had no moves. Well, if he has no moves, any check wins the game. Fortunately for black, this is not mate because they can block with the rook, but you simply take it, and that's a checkmate. Now, my question for you, my dear friends, is can you see that position from here? And if you can, would you be able to put the whole plan into words? I'm going to test you when you come back to class on Sunday and see if you can do that. Okay, so come with to class not only knowing how to win this position, but giving the step-by-step method to do it, okay? It's really going to help your chess. Okay, let's take a look at the last one. This is a pretty common rook and pawn ending that you will see in endgame books for really strong players. This is a concept that will become part of your technique, and it's the cutoff idea. Here, and this is so common, my friends, because very often in chess games, players, they don't hang pieces. What'll happen is somebody will have to give up a rook to stop a pawn from queening, and that'll leave them in a position like this, where black has a pawn and a king, but this pawn can become very, very dangerous, right? If this pawn really starts to run, then white is probably going to have to give up their rook for that pawn and make a draw. But here, there is a certain technique we can use to win the game, and it's the cutoff. Think about it. The pawn, if it decides to make a run for it all by itself, from here, how would you stop it? Imagine the pawn on A2. What would you do to stop it? Well, because the king is so far away, all you would have to do is come under it, here to G1, slide over to A1, and take it. So in 1, 2, 3 moves, you would take it if the pawn was on A2. You guys see that? Okay. Now, would the king get there in time? You play your first move, he comes here. You play your second move, he comes here. Where are you now? Where is your king, your rook, on your second move? You guys remember? It's on A1. You just take the pawn and you win the game. I know this seems a little weird because I'm not moving anything. You can do this. If the pawn were on A2, you simply drop the rook down. The king would come to B5 right here. You slide over. King comes up to one of these squares. Snap off the pawn. But the pawn is not separated from the king. So what do? Well, what would you do? I hope you found the move Rook G5. Oh man, what a move. That's such a good move because it tells the black king, if you send the pawn running, be prepared for me to take the pawn because you're not going to be able to support it. So what can black do? They may move the pawn 1 square, and you're probably not going to chase the pawn. Because if you do, that allows my king to drop down 1 more square. And if you start bringing your king into the game, I'm going to move my pawn again. You bring your king further up, I'm getting ready to make a queen. You only have one way to stop it. You have to play Rook G1. However, here, there's a big difference. When I first showed you this position, the black king was up on A6. Now he gets to B4, a move faster. There's no way to stop that king from connecting to his pawn. You could check him, he's just going to come down. You go back to G1, he's going to come down, threaten to queen. You play check, he goes down, he's going to queen. You check him again, he goes to B2, and you can't stop black from repeating this. you could move your king up, they'll make a queen, you take the queen, and now you just shake hands. The game's over. Okay? So be careful. Don't rush and go after the pawn. Wait for you having the opportunity to stop this king from hanging around here. You see why I lit up that square? Could you imagine if your king was there and this king was over here somewhere? He'd have to back up. And when he did, would you know what to do with your rook? Yeah, you simply slide over and take the pawn. Okay? All right, there's the whistle again. The tea is ready. What does black do? Not much. Let's say they go back. Well, let's bring the king over toward that magic square. If the pawn moves, that's a mistake. You notice I put highlights on the board. There are 2 spaces between the king and the rook, the king and the pawn. Now you can win the pawn by force. Stop the video. Try to figure out how white wins the pawn by force. Okay, rook g3. Just attack it. The only way to save itself, it has to run, and then you simply double attack the king and the pawn. The king moves. Ouchie. Game is over. Okay? That's why after king f7, black is not going to push that pawn. They're going to fight you off with their king. You just keep coming closer. They go back. You come in. They come here. And this is one of those times where you're kind of in this weird opposition with the other king, and you would love for it to be his move. But you don't want to do anything silly and let him out of that little box. So how would you waste a move here to make it black's move? Very good. Just play rook h5. Good technique. King goes to a6, and you just come in. And that's it, my friends. Black either pushes the pawn, and we get what we want, or he goes back with his king. And now, not only are we going to win the pawn, we're going to checkmate the king in the process. Rook a5 check. What's black's only legal move? b8. We take the pawn. You see how this is going to end? What's black's only move? King c8. Thank you very much. You guys are the best.